Nice.
Awesome. Cabarrus.
Welcome, everyone. Make yourself at home. Please, you can drop in where you're joining us from in the chat. We'd love to know. And if you cannot hear me, please either send a message in the chat and I will try to troubleshoot for you before we get started. But I'm going to start right at 2 o'clock. Art Space Charter School. Very nice.
Okay.
All right. Amid the last couple of people that are coming in, they will continue to join, but we're going to go ahead and get started because I want to be respectful to everyone's time and also give our presenters an opportunity, the full amount of time to share their insights with us. So we're going to go ahead and get started. Thank you so much for coming to this session. I am personally very excited to learn. So let's go ahead and kick off. You may have this memorized by now as well, but this is our little intro. We are so excited to have joining us for the NC Conference for Educational Equity brought to the Friday Institute for Educational Innovation at North Carolina State University. Welcome to Juntos, working together to ensure Latinx students thrive. My name is Brittany Miller, and I am a member of the Professional Learning and Leading team at the Friday Institute, and I am your session host. I am here to support the presenters, offer technical assistance, as well as share the session evaluation at the end of the session. So I'll be sharing that in the chat. And if you at any moment have questions for our presenters, we will have time for questions, and I'll be trying to keep track of them as we go through. So please go ahead and drop those as they come into the chat window. And if you have any technical needs, I am again here to help you with that as well. Without further ado, I am very excited to turn it over to our wonderful presenters from the North Carolina State University's Juntos program. So let's open up our hearts and minds, and I'm going to turn it over to them.
Thank you so much, Brittany. Buenos dias. Good afternoon to everybody. My name is Diana Urieta, or Diana. I go by both. I am the Senior Director and Co-Developer of the Juntos program. I came to the States when I was about, gosh, how old was I? 6 years old, and I ended up in Guilford County. I saw some Guilford folks representing us today, so I'm excited that you're in the room, in the house. And so my journey is one that I'm privileged to say came from two immigrant parents who I think for me, that was my my privilege to my success as a student. And so I have also the honor of serving a program that focuses a lot of attention, and you'll learn a little bit more about that in this presentation, on family engagement and what does that mean when we're talking about our Latino students having success and thriving in our spaces of education. So with that, I'll let Dr. Miller introduce himself.
Hello, is my microphone on? All right. Thank you. It is such a pleasure to be here. I am currently an assistant teaching professor at NC State, but I have a large journey throughout education from middle school to high school. I am a career technical education teacher, but I also spent 15 years as a school administrator, as an assistant principal in a very, very large county. In the Wake County area, and then also as the principal of Clinton High School in Clinton, North Carolina, which is located in Sampson County. And I am here because of my experiences working with Juntos. I absolutely love Juntos and what it does for our Latinx students. But I also am here in terms of equity because from my very start of education, of growing up outside of a place that knew no diversity outside of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, I could see from the earliest days of teaching that it was a battle that we had to fight day in and day out to provide that equity, fair equity, equality, and opportunity access day in and day out, because it's an opportunity that not everyone has. So that's why I'm here. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Hi, I will introduce myself next. My name is Holly Ellwanger. I am the Juntos Sustainability Coordinator, but I have also been an ESL teacher. I taught in an ESL classroom in Catawba County in the western part of the state for 13 years. So I do have that background working with our English language learners. I also served as a Juntos site coordinator in Catawba County at St. Stephen's High School in Hickory, North Carolina, and I did that for 3 years. And I really just loved the Juntos program because for me as an educator, it really served as a strength to create that partnership that we so desire between students, parents, the school, and the community. So I'm excited to have you all here to learn a little bit more about the Juntos program and the lessons we are learning in working with the Latinx students and families in our communities.
Hello, everyone. Buenas tardes, good afternoon. My name is Yesenia Campos Franco. I work with the Juntos program and I'm a social worker at Western Lake Crisis Ministry. I'm a NCSU alumni, Go Wolfpack, and I attended Chapel Hill Carborough City Schools from kindergarten to 12th grade. My family and I are originally from Jalisco, Mexico, and we immigrated to North Carolina when I was only a year old. I'm also a DACA recipient and have been the resource in like many other firstborns. I think I was that on steroids, but I was the guinea pig for my family as far as navigating life here in the United States in the educational system. And like Holly and Dr. Miller shared, I'm very grateful to have the opportunity to work with the Juntos program because it's something that a lot of our Latinx students need, the guidance and support not only for them, but also for our families. And we'll talk a little bit more about that today.
Awesome. So we're going to move on. Thank you so much for hearing a little bit about us. I think if we're going to spend some time together, it's important that you all know who's bringing in the message today. So really, this is an opportunity and a hope that you all can leave with some nuggets that will support the growing population of students that are in your classrooms and continue to be in your classrooms. So they're not going anywhere, right? And I think you all decided to join us today because there's a desire to know more. And even though we will talk about the Juntos program a little bit, the hope is that through this conversation of the work that has happened through Juntos, we can really engage in narrowing down what are those things that we need to make sure take place in our educational spaces, right? When we're talking about the Latinx community. And so here's our objectives for today. I will focus a little bit on Juntos, as I mentioned, and how we serve our population. The presenters with me today will also focus on their experience. We have a principal, an ELL teacher, and then a student herself who was in our classrooms. And so we'll be able to hear from them a little bit more. And then we really want a chance to share with you 2 scenarios and provide an opportunity for you to engage in conversation with us. on how would we handle those scenarios if they actually took place. And these are real, so they actually did take place. And then hopefully we'll have some amazing questions and maybe some answers that we'll all really be able to narrow down and have a conversation on. So that's what we have for today. And so I wanted to start with, what is Juntos? Like, what does Juntos mean? And hopefully you know by now that Juntos in Spanish means together. And really that is the core of what our program is about. It's about bridging the gap for our students between that transition of high school and higher education, and really working together to support the parents and the youth that have this educational vision as a family to be successful. And I'll share a little bit of why we think the majority of our population is seeking just that. Our mission is very simple, right? It's to achieve high school graduation and to attend higher education. Now, in saying that, we absolutely 100% know that not all of our students are going to go on to higher education, and that's completely fine. But what we want them to experience is the fact that they have an opportunity and they have choices. And if that is a vision and a mission for themselves, it is attainable. And so we will, as a program, take them through that process and knowledge and resources for them to walk into that path. So quickly, the story of Juntos is one that I think comes back to our families for sure. In 2007, as a professor was starting his career, he knew he wanted to do work with the Latino community. And that drew him to create a survey with his colleague. And so this survey really just had questions about, what is it that you want? What, community, Latino community, what is it that's important to you? Is it health? Is it economic growth? What is it? And out of that survey came out the fact that what parents and families wanted more than anything is to know the educational path for their students to have success. And this was a quote that came out of this first focus groups and surveys that we did. Families need to know the path to get their kids to college. Education is something that has been a highlight for this population for a while, not just today. And so for us, we started with the opportunity to engage with the parents, right? So Juntos started with family workshops. And we knew that if families wanted to know this path on how to have academic success, we needed to, and let me go back to this quote, we needed to provide that. And so that's just what we did. We created a curriculum that engaged high school students and their parents in conversations around how the educational system works in the States, what are the resources to support, how do we better communicate with the school system, and how do we go on to this path of college, right? And so that's how we started, and then from there we grew. And I can tell you that we grew only because the families wanted more. And so we'll hear a little bit about that. But as we grew, what we knew is that we had to bring grants. And being that we were from NC State, we started writing grants like crazy. We were able to sustain some grants that allowed us to go into communities and fully fund a coordinator. And that's how we've been growing. Nobody paid attention to us at that point. We didn't have any impact, right? So we didn't know that this program actually worked. So then as time came to fruition and we started growing and growing, getting more attention, that's when we started getting support from local and state 4-H. And I'll talk a little bit about NC State being the land grant university and us starting the program from cooperative extension. All of your counties have a cooperative extension office. So if you ever want to go talk to them and ask them, hey, what's this program called Juntos? they'll have to communicate with us here at the state level and say, oops, the community's asking about Juntos 4-H. What is that all about? So just an opportunity for you to engage in a conversation with partners that that can support the programming. We also definitely had to partner with our schools, and we knew that. We also started seeing national interest. So this was not something that was a need only in North Carolina, but we knew that there was an opportunity to grow it nationally. When we look at the counties that we touched, you can see here the yellow counties are where we have focused a lot of attention on, and in the past, I'm not saying that it's happening now, but they have been touched through family workshops. And then the blue are where we've brought grants in that have allowed us to completely fund a full program with a full-time coordinator. And then there's some counties that have just worked hard at really thinking about sustainability and how do we even have this program when there's no funding available. And so you can see in green, those are counties that have brought the program into their schools and have been able to manage it with no funds. And we can definitely talk more about that at a later time. I don't want to go into too much detail during this, this conversation. But so with the growth, as I stated, about 7-8 years ago, other states said they wanted to be trained on Juntos. Something was happening and it was going well. So these are now the states, and they're all part of the land grant university, just like NC State, that house a cooperative extension system. And so that is how we've been able to grow through that process. We're in all of these states. Oops, not letting me go forward. All right, so what is Juntos 4-H and implementing the program? When we first started, as I said, we focused on the families and having them together. And what we heard specifically from the parents was we need more resources and connections for our youth, for our kids. And we would say, well, get them to join clubs, get them to be involved in schools. That was part of the communication during the workshops that we did. And they were like, no, they need something that's culturally sound, that can be theirs. And that's how we grew our Juntos 4-H clubs. And that is, for some of you who don't know about 4-H, it is the largest youth development organization in the States. And so there's a lot of resources around 4-H. A lot of you might think that it's all cows and pigs and agriculture, but there's a lot more. And Juntos 4-H is very much focused on leadership development, life skill development, STEM, and civic engagement. And so the other thing that our parents said was, you know what, también necesitamos personas que van a trabajar con nuestros hijos, uno a uno. We need people that will work with our kids one-on-one. We had juniors that we were seeing in our workshops that had not even sat down with their counselors ever. And you could say, oh, that was happening in a rural North Carolina, because that wouldn't happen in Wake County. No, that was happening in Wake County as well. And so that was the reality that our kids were facing, right? They, for some reason, a junior and senior had never met their counselor or sat down with their counselor. So that was a big no-no. We have to bring something in place to support our kids, no matter where they were academically. And then we also knew through research that it was important for our students, that we're majority first-generation students, to have an opportunity to experience college. And so we developed the Juntos Summer Academy, which provides opportunities for kids to come to NC State for a week, as well as engaging them in other 4-H summer programming. So quickly, I just want to go through what is essential for us as Juntos when we're focusing in our with our Latino community. And so this is where I really want you to think about, the things that you're doing when you're thinking about serving your Latinx student and family population. Some of you already know this, familismo. What does that mean? Oh my goodness. It means just the fact that we're very focused on family. And I know that our presenters will talk or touch a little bit more about that. The fact that we needed to empower our parents and youth together, right? We have created a society where adults are in one end of the room and youth are in another end of the room. And guess what? This particular population is used to being together. So yeah, what does that mean, right? As we think about that, for us, it's very important that those family nights have parents and youth together. We have opportunities for them to have their own space, but we also have crucial opportunities for them to be together, because we know that everything outside of Juntos is telling them they have to be different and apart. So we also knew that showing the path to parent involvement was a process, and that for them to be involved in academic success is something that they could definitely be a part of, that they were part of that picture. And so when we think about the norms also of Juntos, for us, it was really important, as I've said before, that relationship between the youth and the parents. And we can talk a lot more about what's going on with specifically our immigrant parents and our now youth who are completely bilingual and know the system and so much better than the parents at this point, right? And so what do we do to really bring those two together? We promote people speaking in Spanish and English, both. We promote our kids being bilingual because that is an asset. And so I encourage you to think about that as you engage with our population in the classrooms. How do we encourage that, their culture, their language, right? That personal touch, that personal connection and care is so crucial with this particular population. We always say, don't assume, ask, educate, and learn together, right? So we can always learn something as professionals from our families. And knowing that, yes, we will have to hold their hands. And while we're doing that, we're going to empower them. So what that means for us as professionals is that it takes time. It's a process, right? And then lastly, juntos is a verb, not a noun. And so I'll leave you with that. I'm going to move on to talk a little bit more about the fact that during the time that we've engaged and grown through the program, we know that we can't do this program alone. And so just building the team and knowing that we needed to be resourceful and flexible and being a role model was crucial to the work that we needed to do. And so with that, I just wanted to share a couple of numbers of impact. So because we're here at the university, we have been able to do pre and post evaluation and focus groups with our families. For the past 5 years in a row, we've had 100% of our seniors graduate from high school. But I can tell you that what gets me excited about the work that I do is when I hear that the families and the youth are feeling like they have a place where they belong in that space, in that educational space. So we're doing something right. When we hear the confidence that grows, when we see that growth between students that were scared about taking AP and honors classes to taking AP and honors classes. So these are just a couple of numbers to throw out there to you, but I can tell you what gets me excited about the work is that our kids feel like they belong in those educational spaces. So a lot of you may say, okay, I want to hear more about Juntos and I want it in my school. And so I can tell you that the important thing for you to do is to check us out on our website, and I'll provide that at the end. Learn a little bit more about us, but most importantly, it will take investment. And so what I say about that, and this is why I get excited about folks like Dr. Miller, who was a principal, and folks like in Greene County, superintendent there, just engaging a conversation with us and saying, we want Juntos because I want my Latinx students to succeed. folks like Catawba County, our extension director, who economically, he's like, we need Juntos. It makes sense. These are the kids in rural North Carolina who graduate from high school, go to community college, and come back to their community because their families are here and they're investing in their counties. So again, I think I leave you with that. I'll let Dr. Miller move on with his conversation, and we'll leave the questions for later.
Thank you so much. As a Caucasian male in this day and age, the whole notion of white privilege has come to the forefront. But as I shared in my introduction, I felt it immediately in starting my educational career in the early 90s in North Carolina. And I worked very hard from the start to make sure that I did whatever I possibly could to remove barriers, work around barriers, and do whatever is necessary to create equity and access. When I became principal of Clinton High School, which is in a small rural county of Sampson, the Juntos was already there and established. But what I found was there were so many opportunities that we needed that replicated what Juntos was doing. And I worked very, very diligently to say yes to anything and everything that our Juntos family asked for. And so the school was always open when they had their family engagement nights. Our milestone, what does it take to make sure that the milestone celebration can happen? What do we need to do to make sure that we get a bus to get the students to NC State when there are buses that are supposed to go to athletics instead? You know, the say yes at all costs. And the reason that that was so important for me is because this was building capacity to make my job easier. Being a principal was the most difficult thing I ever did in my entire life, because every decision that I ever made had opposing views at it, and people that came loaded for proverbial, loaded for bear in everything that they asked of me. So any type of organization that we had that created equity and access for students, especially in this particular case, our Latinx student, I was fully invested because it was a self-fulfilling prophecy. And the barriers that we had when I first started became less and less. And by year 5, we were doing very, very well. I've placed 2 pictures on screen here. The picture on the left is our 27 milestone celebration. And in that, you can see a wonderful group of Latinx students from all different kinds of families, family backgrounds, but they were behind the scenes practicing for their graduation milestone celebration. And I can tell you that I would sit in the audience and tears would stream down my face with just joy for these students as they were celebrating prior to the actual graduation. And I don't have a picture in there with me in it with handing over a diploma, because I was taking these pictures and tweeting them out at Dark Horse Doc because I was just so proud of what the students do. The program was already in existence when I arrived at Clinton High School, but the picture on the right is my 3rd and 4th year at Clinton High School. And the reason that that's important is because this picture was taken at the North Carolina legislature. And the students in there, especially Senor Amador, on the very right-hand side of the picture, he was one of my phenomenal students and very involved in Juntos, very much taking a leadership in his family environment, and a phenomenal young man. But his story is one of being involved in Juntos early in high school, giving him the leadership and the confidence and bringing his family involved. I think he was the father of his family, or the father figure. But he had little brothers and sisters and took care of his mom. And he actually then became involved in advanced placement. Very, very concerned about that, but still did it because he knew that he had his Juntos structure and family, the togetherness to support him through that. While I was working administratively to tear down any and all barriers that were there to the equity and the access, students like Edwin, Amador, and the others here in the picture on the left were eagerly taking advantage of those openings in honors and advanced placement courses, as well as dual enrollment at the local community college. And that is important because the results that we received designated Clinton High School as one in only a couple hundred in the nation for 2 years in running that earned the Equity and Access Award for growth in the number of students, minority students in our advanced placement program, but also in their success on the AP. So not only were they in the courses, but they were successful academically. And that was because of the culture of togetherness and support that Juntos created, and a safe space to fail forward. And it's incredibly moving for me to know that that is all possible because of the work that Juntos did to build that leadership and capacity within our student population and our school for underrepresented populations to be successful in AP. I'll cut it off there, only to say thank you to Diana and the others who made Juntos possible while I was at Clinton High School, because it was a lifesaver for me mentally and physically in a very difficult job.
Hi, so again, I'm Holly Ellwanger. I was an ESL teacher in Catawba County at St. Stephen's High School for 13 years. And for 3 of those years, I also was the coordinator for the St. Stephen's High School Juntos program. And so I want to talk a little bit about my experience with our English language learners, as well as our Latinx families in general, before I talk about my experience with Juntos. So as many of you, I was working with these students and these families on a daily basis and trying to figure out how I, as an outsider to the community, but one that really cared about my students and their community, could empower them, mentor them, and help them reach their personal and academic success goals that they had. And the takeaway really came for me that we had to see these students as capable of thriving, not just surviving. And I think that is so important, to see the potential in each and every student, regardless of their background or where they're starting from when they come to us. And I know as educators, that's in all of our hearts, but that's something that we have to get out there in the community as well. So in working with my English language learners and the Latinx community in general in our system, I really saw that the students and the families needed a trusted person within the system that they could count on, that they could get reliable information from. There's a lot of fear for some of our families for coming into the building. They don't understand the system. They don't know how schools work in the United States. And so really, by being that trusted person in your school building, in your school system, in your community, you're providing a tremendous resource for these students and families. And that's whether you have Juntos or whether you're just doing it on your own in your own community. I really encourage you to try to be that person for our students and families. Diana also talked a little bit about the dynamic between students and families and how oftentimes we separate them. And what I saw as an educator, oftentimes when the parents didn't speak English, there was this dynamic where the students almost by the high school level had more authority when it came to academic issues than the parents did, because they were the ones acting as translators. They were the ones getting the information. And really what Juntos provided, and I was so thankful for as an educator when this framework came into place for us, was that they were able to get this information together at the same time. And it allowed the students to be children, it allowed the parents to be parents, and it allowed them to work together. So it allowed them to work juntos, right, to make those decisions and to realize those goals. So that was really meaningful for me. The picture you see here are two of my dear students. They're cousins, Rebecca and Denise, and there's a third student I'd like to talk about, Carlos, who's not pictured. These were three of my first seniors to graduate from the Juntos program. And they're rock stars. I don't know how else to say it. At the high school level, they were not English language learners, but they did all enter in the public school system as ELL students, and had exited the program throughout their time in school. But they came to high school with very different goals, but with goals. And so through Juntos, we were able to provide that framework, that mentorship, that education for the students and their families in order to help them reach their goals. I'm excited to say Rebecca is at our local community college. She's at Catawba Valley Community College. She's getting a 2-year degree in accounting and then hopes to transfer to a 4-year school to finish that. Her cousin Denise is actually at a private university here in Hickory, Lenore Ryan University, also getting an accounting degree. And Carlos is at Western Carolina University, where he hopes to eventually go to med school after graduating with a degree in to be a certified EMT. Why I point out these three students in particular is because through the Juntos program, we not only helped them graduate from high school, which is awesome, and pursue further education, which is the goal, but we've really empowered them and their families. It was already there in them, but we were able to help ignite that spark within them. Denise and Rebecca's mom have come back and been mentors for other families in the Juntos program, even though their oldest children have graduated. They also now have 9th graders who will be participating in Juntos again at the high school level. And so they thought the program was so great, they wanted to do it again. But more than that, they're really a support system for other Latinx families in Catawba County. I have gotten lots of phone calls from other parents and students who are like, yes, I got this information from Aladani or from Hortensia, which are these lovely girls' parents. And they said to call you, or they said that you would help me find the right contact. And so it's not about me, and I don't want it to come across that way, because it's very important that as educators, we don't see ourselves as the saviors of these students or these families. We're just there to help empower them. And so we have empowered these parents to help other parents seek resource and guidance when they need it. Carlos, who I mentioned, is at Western Carolina. He's there absolutely free. He was able to get scholarships to cover all 4 years of college, which is awesome since he's planning on going to medical school. That will help with defray that cost a little bit. But his mom, Violetta, has actually come back as a volunteer formally really with Juntos and is providing child care at our Juntos meetings for the younger generation, which is awesome. I really cannot speak enough to I want a different word than empowerment, but that's all I can come up with. But the empowerment of these families and the growth that they have provided not only for themselves, their own children, and their families, but truly for their community, whether it's their extended family, their neighborhood, their church. They really have become a trusted resource themselves when it comes to education. And I think that's so valuable. We see that a lot in the majority community, and it's nice to see that capacity being built in the Latinx community as well. And so I'm very grateful that Catawba County Schools was willing to make this investment. I'll speak very briefly to how that even happened in Catawba County. It was through our 4-H agent. She went to a training, she found out about Juntos, and she said, I've got to have that in my county. She brought it back through a partnership with Catawba County Schools, and at the time, Communities in Schools. They implemented just the family workshop piece without any funding. And once we were actually able to get funding, I was able to be brought on as a part-time coordinator at the high school level. And this past year, we were able to expand to support our middle school students as well. So it really just takes that vision, that passion for you to facilitate change within your community. And so you all just being here and listening to this today, I know that there's at least a little bit of that fire and that passion in you to make that difference in your community. So I'm going to turn it over to Yesenia.
All right, so the picture that you see right there is a picture of my family. I always like to uplift the work that my parents have done to support me from coming to this country and at such a young age. My dad is an electrician and my mom is a housekeeper, and through their hard work, you know, they have supported me through my education and in my life as a whole. And I always like to share that when I'm invited to speak. But like I shared previously in my introduction, being the oldest of 3 daughters and an immigrant, I had to navigate most spaces independently. One of those being the education system. My educational experience had its highs and lows. I was fortunate enough to be a student in Chapel Hill Carver City schools where resources and programs existed and were put into use for the students in the district. During elementary, middle, and high school, I had amazing teachers that encouraged me to challenge myself and believe in myself when I did not. Personally, I was put in AIG in 5th grade and took honors classes in middle school as well as honors and AP classes in high school. And one of the programs that most impacted me and challenged me was the AVID program. I was an AVID from 7th to 12th grade and was aware of the expectations that were not strictly enforced at home. And then that's not because my parents didn't care, but because my mom would always say, you know, tú sabes lo que estás haciendo, you know what you're doing. She didn't understand, you know, how school worked here in the States, but she, you know, believed that I could, you know, do what was needed to be done. And, you know, they were not the parents to check on my progress reports or my report cards. But like I said, they believed in me and certainly knew that I was trying my best in school at all times. And despite the supports I had in programs like AVID and Blue Ribbon Mentor Advocate, when I was not in those spaces, I often felt like I stuck out like a sore thumb. Most of the time, I would be one of the very few Latinx students in my classes, And if there were other Latinx students in my class, it was usually because they were also an AVID. Most of my Latinx peers would choose or would be placed in the regular classes. They would not be, challenged to take those higher level classes. And most of them went through school thinking that they weren't smart enough. And like I said, they weren't challenged and they weren't supported by their teachers to push those boundaries past their comfort. Even when being in class, it was almost certain that the very few Latinx and Black students would, typically join forces, and our white peers, would work together as well if given the choice. And when assignments or with assignments or projects, I always felt like my classmates did not expect greatness from me. They expected the bare minimum. And I don't know if that's reality, but that's what I personally felt. I would get so nervous when doing presentations or just speaking up and answering a question or getting called on, because that's probably what happened 9 times out of 10 because I was so shy. And even in doing group work, I felt like I would not participate as much because I was worried of not sounding intelligent. And most of the time when I did, you know, put forward my ideas or shared my ideas, I felt that they were be pushed to the side and kind of seen as, we're not going to do that. That idea was, silly. And unfortunately, in high school, there were times where my white peers would joke or sometimes even make stereotypes about Mexican culture. And I didn't feel comfortable speaking up because in those spaces, I was, the only one most of the time. And as a student, I expected my teacher to speak up and correct students. But at times it would just be, exchanging glances with the teacher and nothing would be said, which, eventually just made I would just, be furious. I would be mad, but I didn't know how to advocate for myself or my community at that time. I expected and hoped always that the educational environment would be a place of acceptance and a place where every student had the opportunity to push their own boundaries. As I shared previously, I am a DACA recipient. And in high school, I guess it was confusing to say the least. I aspired to continue my education and bring into fruition the dreams that my parents had when deciding to leave everything behind in order to provide a better life for my sisters and I. I always wanted to prove to my parents that all the years of being away from home, being away from our extended family and their country were worth it. My biggest fear was to upset my parents and make them feel like their sacrifices were for nothing. And when trying to apply for financial aid and to universities, it was a maze. It really was, because I felt like I had barriers everywhere I went. And even though I was in a program like AVID, which, dedicated class time to applying to colleges and universities, or whether it was figuring out FAFSA, and I would realize, man, I'm not eligible for federal funds, or, many of the other barriers. It did eventually take a toll on me mentally. And I knew my parents could not afford to pay the out-of-state tuition that here in North Carolina we're expected to pay as undocumented students. So, while my peers were receiving scholarships and acceptance letters, I was still trying to figure out, what was next for me. And, I did apply to a couple universities just to test out to see if I had what it took to, even be accepted. Even though I knew that, most likely I would go to community college. And even though I took a route that would be, not as expensive, I knew that it would be a huge financial burden for my family. And You know, overall, the atmosphere for Latinx families at the schools I attended varied. I would say that in elementary and high school, I went to a primarily white and affluent school, and realized that the atmosphere for Latinx parents was also a difficult situation. In my personal experience, my parents never felt comfortable going to, you know, school events such as like open houses. And in middle school, I felt like it was a little more diverse, and I felt that my parents felt more comfortable going to events due to, you know, translation being provided constantly at those events. But regardless, I would often be the one who would translate for my parents. And to be quite honest, those moments were very frustrating for me. You know, I didn't feel comfortable translating because, you know, as an immigrant and as, you know, the firstborn, from a very young age, I've had to take on that role. And growing up, I would feel very uncomfortable being the only one, you know, whispering in my parents' ear and constantly talking when everyone else was silent. And I honestly sometimes couldn't even keep up. And, you know, that it's something that a lot of us immigrant children or children of immigrants learn throughout the years. But I also, something that Holly shared, I just wanted to feel like a normal kid and talk to my parents and, you know, see my parents talk to other parents. But I knew and I realized that, you know, I could not leave my parents alone because they weren't comfortable. And I didn't want them to feel more isolated than they were already being made to feel in those situations. You know, people would look at my family funny just because of how, I guess, the awkwardness of us being there and not feeling welcome. Or even if other parents would, you know, try to start a conversation, I could immediately tell how uncomfortable people were when realizing that there was, you know, a language barrier there. And unfortunately, I felt like the only school events that my parents were more welcomed and, you know, more made to feel comfortable were at events like cultural nights or, you know, events where they were needed or their experiences and their stories were celebrated. So overall, these types of events and trends have continued up until May when I graduated and finished graduate school. But I have learned to push through these situations and to advocate for myself and those around me due to programs like Juntos who give us the knowledge and the tools to do that for ourselves and, you know, for our siblings that, you know, are, you know, growing alongside us and our peers in school that have similar backgrounds.
Thank you, Jasenia. I think you just became the most famous speaker of all times. I think you've gotten some requests. So you might be traveling all over North Carolina, which, you know, as long as they pay you, you say yes, right? Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to us. We were going to focus on scenarios, and I think we're going to give some time right now for questions. And then if we have a little bit of time at the end, we'll share one of our scenarios and go from there. So any questions at this point that we definitely need to answer? And you all, I've read some of them and I have a couple of responses, but I'll let you all answer any questions. Or Brittany, I don't know if you've kept track of all of them.
I've tracked them. I can show you the ones that we have so far. And then if others want to add into the chat, we can build on them.
Perfect.
So the first one was as a bit of a precursor to the question, but I work at a partial Spanish immersion magnet K-8 school, and my administration would like to increase program for my Latinx families. One concern about in-person programming post-COVID is the possibility of inadvertently inviting the attention to DHS or ICE, or even the threat that it would be a decreased participation. Do you have any suggestions based on your experience?
Hmm. I don't know if anybody has any responses to that. I think we have always faced fear in our communities. I think that the most important thing you can do is have conversations with the families at your school and see what they feel comfortable with. So things that we thought they would feel very uncomfortable with, they're like, no, we can do that. Or, for example, one time I know we were wanting to have family nights at the extension office. Well, families were like, absolutely not, because I know there's stopping points in that area and we're not going to risk it. So I think the most important thing you can do is ask the community. Because maybe sometimes they'll be like, you know what, we're willing to take the risk. We're going to go. This is important for us. So I don't know if that answers your question, but I know as a Juntos program as well, we are doing a lot of virtual next semester. And what we learn next semester, this coming semester, oh my gosh, it's here. But what we learned from in the spring and where I was definitely challenged, and Jasenia lived this with me. So I was very scared that if we had a virtual connection with our families, that somehow they were not going to feel the connection. I was just like, no, this is not right. They're not going to, it's, you know, are we going to get anything out of it? Are they going to get anything out of it? Do they know technology? Are they, you know, are we being fair? All these questions that I had in my head, right? And then we had the event. We took a chance and we had it, and we provided as much information. We took 10 minutes to explain how Zoom works, how the chat box works, how they can clap their hands when they hear something positive. And I was just tremendously just blown away by how our parents were engaged and they wanted to have those conversations. And it was awesome to see, because I knew some of them only had a smartphone, they didn't have a computer. But to see the face of a parent and the youth right next to each other, because they're looking at a smartphone in front of them, but they're engaged and they're talking about their health, their mental health during this crazy time that we're living with, for us to be able to give them that space was a joy.
And if I could also add, Diana, I know in one of I think it's Clinton that they actually reached out and spoke with the police department and started those conversations between our Juntos families and the police department.
Yeah.
And I could speak briefly to that. And this is where the challenge, the points for concern are really real. The stakes of being undocumented and being stopped, it just boggles my mind that we have to worry about that. But we do. My community, the Clinton community, has seen that when all succeed, then we succeed as a community socially. So they've been very, very responsive with hiring Latinx officers, being visible, and anytime they could, they worked collaboratively with our Juntos students to make sure that the face of the Clinton police and the others in the area were the faces of youth and of invitation and openness and success. That's not every community. So as Director Irieta has said, it's something that we have to gingerly feel out. But I can say that it definitely works, even in a very conservative community as well.
Thank you for sharing and responding to that. That was a big question. I just have a couple others, mostly about, I'm going to kind of collapse 3 different questions that were specifically about your Juntos program. We know it was indicated earlier that Juntos is mostly for high school level students, but if you have any suggestions for bringing the program to younger students, or enough if you maybe don't have the whole program, is there a way to get involved even if you aren't specifically involved in the Juntos program, and we can kind of combine those?
Sure. I'll answer the latter. So we know that more than any other time, right now is a crucial time for us to be out there providing resources to our families. And so one of the things that our program is doing, as I stated, are virtual parent nights and youth nights next semester. And because this is what COVID-19 has done, right? So we can think negative about everything that it has done, but one thing that it has provided us with is the fact that we now, Juntos, has to do something virtual beyond just this crisis. What virtual meant for us last semester was an opportunity to bring all of these counties that are implementing the program together to have real conversations. It was a 45-minute virtual session. And so what we're committed to doing this coming semester is having those virtual sessions with parents engaged in a topic that's of need to the majority of the population. And so to answer your question, if you email me, which you'll get my email after this, and you're serious about engaging your parents and your youth in those virtual experiences, they will be invited and they can participate in our Juntos virtual experiences this coming semester. And so you will become a partner, right? If you're saying you're interested in that, you will become a partner. So it's your responsibility to really communicate with the population to get that information there. And then the first question, we are really not, everybody says, you gotta be K through 12, you gotta be K through 12. As a Juntos program, we're not there yet. We serve, you know, 8th through 12th. We've had 7th graders participate in our programs before. And so I can tell you, you can look at some of the resources that we have to see if that supports the younger populations. If you email me, specifically if you're interested in a resource, there is a program in Durham that specifically serves that K through 5th. That is focused on Latinx. So I can give you that information as well. Oh, it's 3 o'clock.
Yep, we have run up on time. That was the majority of the questions. I think the last was really how do we get involved in the program, which I know you covered kind of at the beginning, but I didn't know if there was a specific link you want to share with people real quick. And that could kind of close us out. I dropped in emails as well as the survey requests, but if we can say a huge thank you to our presenters. It was wonderful. Thank you. There's that link to the Juntos program. I'm going to add that as well. And I'm going to keep dropping those links in. And thank you so much for your time and insights and personal stories. It was a wonderful session. I don't want to speak for everybody, but it was wonderful.
Gracias. Thank you, everybody.
Chat is going very quickly. I'm going to drop in those links one more time. If I can find them. Can you drop in the Juntos link one more time for me? I meant to grab it and I missed it. There it is. Thank you.
Yes, of course.
And if anyone has any trouble with the CEU request, there's always somebody who has an issue, and that's totally fine. I expect it. So if you have any trouble, you can type into the chat and I will send it directly to your email if we need to do that to troubleshoot. But we'll stay in here until like 3:05, and I'll stay just to make sure that we close everything out. And I'm going to stop our recording.